Hello friends, welcome to the NOS studio. We are going to discuss today one of the very essential important concept in sociology, that is culture. We'll be discussing the concept of culture, its definition and characteristics. The concept of culture is widely understood as a co-synonymous with the term sociology and anthropology, social anthropology, primarily because societies cannot exist without culture. We have various societies across the world, and all these societies can be differentiated from each other primarily because of their unique cultural identities. That's what makes the culture of concept of culture so vibrant, so widely discussed in sociology. There are many scholars who have been discussing the concept of culture. Almost every scholar in sociology and social anthropology has discussed the concept of culture. That shows the essentiality, and the importance given to the concept of culture. Uh, one thing which needs to be understood, that there is no one culture. Culture have various variants across the societies. That's why we have a different kind of societies as well, because we have a different kinds of culture, different variants of culture. So there cannot be a one culture. We cannot say that one culture exists in a one country or a universe. It's almost impossible because uh, individual civilizations have their different origins, different traits that the evolutionary process, they develop different kind of culture as well. So we'll be discussing all these issues in detail. Uh, as we discussed that culture differentiate one society from another, and a scholar needs to ask what is that which differentiate one society from another. So there are different kinds of things. There are custom, traditions, morals, which you I'm very sure you must have understood by now. So culture is essentially divided into broader two categories, that is material and non-material. And what is material and non-material? That needs to be understood. As a part of society, as a part of community, we all belong to a different kind of a religion. We may have a one religion, but within that we too have different variants of religion. Local traditions do influence our religious beliefs also. We have different language, food habits, we have a different economic system. For example, the underdeveloped nations and the developed nations, they have a huge gap of their economic development that differentiates their economic development from the another. We may have a different political system as well. So all these aspects, when we count, are counted in a non-material aspect. You cannot see language, you cannot see religion, right? But on the other hand, when we differentiate one society from another in terms of their architectural and monumental aspects, the kind of building designs we have may be different from another society. For example, in India itself, if you see the northern part of India, the architectural design is quite different from the southern part of India, and it's also different from the eastern part of India, especially if you see the monuments, architectural designs of temples, you find a huge difference. So what makes these differences is also part of our culture. So these will be counted as a material aspects of culture which to differentiate one society from the another. So nutshell, culture is something which is your brand, which defines you in a whole, right? Your culture is yours, and that culture is not individual in a nature. For example, if you argue you belong to one culture, it doesn't mean that that culture belongs typically to you, because you are a part of a society, you are part of a group. So you share that cultural values with the members of the same community or a group, right? So on the same line, another person coming from another region maybe have a different culture, but that culture is shared among that small group of people, community, right? So that what is your brand also. Now, when we come to a definitional aspect of culture, there are many definitions. People have defined and attempted culture in a very colloquial language also. In our normal conversation, in a discussion, we also many times use the word culture, that my culture and your culture, these kind of things usually comes in our conversation, informal conversation. But how to define a culture? What is the formal definition of culture? So this is one of the most important definition is which is quite popular in socio-anthropology, is that culture is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, moral, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. So you need to remember a few things. When we have this elaborated definition of culture, you see that many things are coming into that: knowledge, belief, art, morals, customs, and any other capabilities and habits which you are acquiring as a part of a member of a society. So it means if you are not part of a society, then the cultural traits, whatever you are acquiring, may not be a cultural trait of a society. That may be unique, because individuals always lives, in a group. Individual doesn't live all alone, right? So that what makes individuals from different from animal world as well, right? Though animal have their own culture, animal society they have their own culture, but broadly when we define, we say that individual human beings are a social being. They live in a groups and community. So whatever you learn as a part of a member of a society, that will be counted as a part of your culture, and that may be classified in terms of your food habits, in terms of your language, in terms of your dress patterns itself. You see, we find a wider differences in the dress patterns, dress codes among different societies. So what makes that difference is visible. The only thing which makes it feasible is that the cultural differences, right? There is nothing bad and good when we discuss culture, though the usual tendency is that people do consider their culture as primary and important, and others' culture is, less in a value, right? And that what we call as a ethnocentrism. But there is nothing good and bad in when we discuss sociologically the concept of culture. So different tastes, different food habits exist, as our food habits and cultural and dress patterns and codes are important. Similarly, the dress pattern, cultural codes and languages of other people are also important. They have their own context, right? So that what makes the cultural diversity, important for any discussion of sociology. So primarily, you can understand that that culture is a way of life common to a group of people, as we already discussed, and you acquire these abilities as a part of, as a member of society only. This could be acquired by, mainly by two ways. You are a part of a society, you are part of a group, and by virtue of that, your belongingness to a member of that society, you learn, you imitate from your elders, from your peer groups, certain kind of cultural traits. And another would be someone would be guiding you, right? Elders are guiding you, socializing you. So this is the way you have to speak to your elders, to your peer groups. This is the way you have to dress up, this is the way you should eat food. So all these things, when are taught by someone, all are coming under the teaching abilities. So as a member of society, you imitate culture and you learn also, right? Both the base culture, evolve as a part of a society. So as a part of society, therefore everyone in a group has to learn, and the cultural traits, and someone also teach that abilities to you as a member of society. Now it's very important to understand when we discuss a concept of culture, the importance of time and space. That what makes we as a very sensitive to the idea of culture, though most of the discussion in culture leads to a cultural ethnocentrism also, cultural relativities. But if you understand the concept of time and space, then you are much more sensitive, develop much more sensibility to the understanding of culture. So what is time? What is time bound process in a culture, right? Look, any culture, whatever culture means, you take your example, it doesn't exist forever. Culture has its time, and gradually it undergoes a lot of change. For example, the most important example would be your food habits. Over the period of time, our food habits are undergoing tremendous changes, but it's gradual, right? Whatever was relevant few decades ago or few centuries ago may not be relevant now, but it still exists, right? Uh, Not in a very prominent way, but somehow it exists, it has its traces. But food habits also undergoes change. Likewise, the dress patterns. During festivals, we usually dress up ourselves in a traditional dress code, but not in a regular routine ways, right? Because we have a culture, we have a tradition, and occasionally it is manifested, right? That what makes the process of the concept of time very essential and important when we discuss a concept of culture. No culture exists forever. Culture always undergoes gradual, subtle change that has to be understood by each and everybody. The present culture of yours may undergo change, and the next generation when comes, they will have a different kind of culture, according to the existing the societal material, and other political economic system. The culture also undergo gradual change. Another is also the importance of space. Your language, your food, your cultural habits, whatever comes, has a spatial importance. Your language may be important in that context, but may not be important in other contexts also. So whatever culture, when we talk about, we do classify culture in a context itself. It doesn't have, it doesn't lead to much understanding when we discuss, a concept of culture beyond the space. So culture and space has to be understood at the same time, So that makes that what makes the concept of culture, much more meaningful for any student of sociology. For example, a tribal society has its own culture, right? But when you certainly gradually comes to a metropolitan area, that importance to culture, that meaning of culture undergoes tremendous change. That cannot be implicated into a different space. So it remains importance into a very fixed kind of locale context only. So material and non-material, we have already discussed in the last slide, that material and non-material aspects also to be understood in terms of time and space. Whatever material, architectural, cultural elements used to exist may not be existing right now, because the time has passed and new advances has come into architectural designs, and people do appreciate the older kind of designs, but no, they are much more adaptive to the latest kind of development. That what happens in a urban development also. Urban development designs is undergoing tremendous change. Similarly, your dress patterns, what we used to wear few centuries or decades ago, may not be feasible now, right? But because the time has passed and it has undergone a gradual kind of change. So material and non-material culture of any community and society again undergoes lot of changes and transformation over a period of time within that space and context. So it has to be understood in relation to each other, time, space, and material and non-material components of a culture. So one can discuss various characteristics of a culture, and n number of characteristics one can draw, but in a nutshell, broadly you can classify uh, the characteristics of a culture into broadly three kind of categories, right? Which makes a sense, right? Culture is universal. Culture is universal because culture exists everywhere. Wherever you find the traces of a human society, you will find a culture. You cannot find a society, you cannot find a human society without culture. That is impossible, right? Whatever culture they have, but that would be called as a culture, whether it is barbaric or civilized, modern, or rural, whatever classification you can draw, but there will be a culture, and it has to be respected in that way, right? Culture is stable, yet it is also dynamic. know what that means culture though have some kind of stable characteristics, but it also gradually undergoes changes. As we discuss in terms of our food and architectural design, it remains stable for one generation. For example, our generation will find certain traits of our culture existing and continuing, but gradually the next generation would find it has also undergone a lot of changes. For example, the dress pattern, right? The the way marriage used to be celebrated, it has also undergone a kind of change. Food habits, the kind of educational aspects of our society. Though education is stable institution, but it is also undergoing a kind of change. So every institution is undergoing change, and that what makes the concept of culture is also dynamic in that way. Dynamism is not that it is transformatory. It doesn't transform itself over a night or a week. It takes many years, maybe decades also, to undergo that kind of transformation. And another important characteristics, culture is a learned behavior, right? You learn as a part of society, as a member of society only, right? If you are not a member of society, it's very impossible to learn that culture, right? You cannot learn the culture of African tribal society only through books, right? Only someone told you, you cannot learn that. You have to live there, you have to be a part of that, you have to grow up yourself in that context, right? And space. Only then you will be able to acquire the traits of that culture. So the belongingness is very important part of that culture. So friends, culture, the concept of culture as we discussed, right? It is mainly discussed in the area of socio-anthropology, and various scholars has made a different kind of attempts. But the nuanced understanding, the composite understanding of culture is that there are different variants of culture first, and each and every culture needs to be respected. Every society has its own unique cultural evolutionary processes which undergo certain transformation over a period of time. Therefore, the importance of time is very essential when we understand the context of culture. If you understand culture out of the context of time, you will not be able to understand culture. Then the next part, what we emphasized again and again, is that the context of space. Space is very essential, right? Cultural traits exist in a particular context, though they diffuse from one society to another, but the essentiality lies only into that context only. If you miss that context, that would be very difficult to understand. For example, Eskimos, they have their own kind of culture. You cannot replicate that into urban metropolitan area like Delhi or other kind of society. The context of southern India, their food habits cannot be implemented, cannot be copied into the northern part. So each and every society has its own culture and context. That what makes one society different from the another society. Then mainly the last part which we emphasize is material and non-material aspect. Many scholars, without going into much details, have defined the concept of culture as material and non-material aspects of our society. That could also be one possible kind of definition, and it covers everything, whatever we acquire as a member of a society. And material and non-material aspects can count anything, whatever comes to your mind, which you have acquired as a part of society, from your food habits, from your architectural designs, your religion, your community relation, your kinship relations, so and so forth. Anything you count would be coming under as a part of non-material and material kind of aspects. And that is what laymen also try to understand the concept of culture through material and through the differences of material and non-material aspects. And material aspects of culture are much more visible, right? Right at the outset, you can differentiate that my dress patterns are different from yours. It means you are belonging to a different culture. When we speak, so we understand that you are coming from that and that particular society. It means the non-material kind of non-material kind of aspects of culture comes to visibility only when we have an interaction between one society to another. But without having interaction, the material aspects helps us to differentiate one society from another. So that is what makes a concept of culture also very difficult and complex in sociology and social anthropologies. And there are a lot of peoples who always have kept the concept of culture primary to their any kind of theory of social change in the society. So I urge you to go into a wider details of the concept of culture and read this concept much more nuancedly from other readings. I hope that you have understood the concept of culture in a very nuanced, comprehensive way, and I thank you for a patient listening. Thank you.
प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने।
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो, धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे,
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर। शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर।
शिक्षा और परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर। दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बात
कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं
घर बैठे पाएं राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय शिक्षा संस्थान यानी NIOS में एडमिशन, वो भी एकदम आसान तरीके से, जिससे शिक्षार्थियों को होगी समय और धन दोनों की बचत। NIOS से शिक्षा कभी भी कहीं भी। शिक्षार्थियों, क्या आप जानते हैं NIOS में एडमिशन लेने का सरल और सुगम तरीका, जिससे शिक्षार्थियों को ऑनलाइन प्रवेश लेने में सहूलियत मिलती है। NIOS में प्रवेश की प्रक्रिया पूर्णतया ऑनलाइन है। शिक्षार्थी घर बैठे इंटरनेट द्वारा प्रवेश के लिए सबसे पहले NIOS की वेबसाइट www.nios.ac.in पर लॉगिन करें। अपना ईमेल आईडी और पासवर्ड डालकर अपना पंजीकरण करें। पंजीकरण के बाद लॉगिन करने पर ऑनलाइन प्रवेश हेतु आवेदन पत्र खुलेगा। आवेदन पत्र को निर्देशानुसार भरें और प्रिंट आउट लें। इस प्रिंट आउट पर अपनी फोटो संलग्न करें। ऑनलाइन प्रवेश के लिए शुल्क हेतु भुगतान के तरीके हैं: क्रेडिट कार्ड के द्वारा, डेबिट कार्ड के द्वारा, राष्ट्रीयकृत बैंक के ड्राफ्ट के माध्यम से, जो कि सचिव NIOS नई दिल्ली या नोएडा के पक्ष में देय हो। भरे हुए आवेदन पत्र के साथ साथ डिमांड ड्राफ्ट और संलग्न किए जाने वाले दस्तावेज हैं: जन्म रजिस्ट्रार के जिला कार्यालय से जारी जन्म प्रमाण पत्र की सत्यापित प्रति, जिसमें जन्म तिथि अंकित हो, पिछले विद्यालय से प्राप्त विद्यालय छोड़ने का प्रमाण पत्र, जिसमें आवेदक की जन्म तिथि लिखी हो। प्रवेश फॉर्म का प्रिंट आउट NIOS के संबद्ध क्षेत्रीय केंद्रों पर 10 दिनों में पहुंच जाना चाहिए, अन्यथा उचित दस्तावेज ना लगे होने पर आवेदन फॉर्म रद्द किया जा सकता है। प्रवेश प्रक्रिया की पुष्टि होने के बाद शिक्षार्थियों को परिचय पत्र व अध्ययन सामग्री डाक द्वारा तुरंत पहुंचाई जाती है। ऑनलाइन प्रवेश एक बहुत ही सुगम और सुविधाजनक प्रवेश प्रणाली है। ऑनलाइन ऑन टाइम फॉर सेफ एंड सिक्योर एडमिशन।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो।
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे,
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने।
ज्ञान ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर।
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर।
शिक्षा और परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता